So we'll do the first prayer or the first round in English and then 2 times in Tibetan tonight. And so this is going for refuge and taking bodhichitta, generating bodhichitta. So really the whole course is about bodhicitta, and taking refuge is sort of the first step. So we'll do it with our whole heart. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodang sogi chognam la changchu pardu dagni kyap suchi dagi chunyen gi pe sonam gi drola penchir sangye drupar shok. Sangye chodang sogi chognam la changchu pardu dagni kyap suchi dagi chunyen gi pe sonam gi drola penchir sangye drupar shok. So that's our formalities. So this is our third class, and we're going to go ahead and talk more about the 8 verses. But this week, coming into this, I really wanted to talk about how to embody joy, because it's really been sort of coming up in odd places. My principal in the school decided that that's the focus for our school now. We're no longer going to worry about the curriculum. We're going to bring joy back into the school. He wants us to have fun in the classroom and bring students the joy of learning again. So even and then other places too, it's just popping up everywhere. And since this is a course about how we take problems and we transform them into happiness, I think we also need to kind of talk about how do we actually embody that joy or happiness in our lives. So that was my idea. Another phrase that kind of informed that was yesterday, Khandro Kungabuma Rinpoche, who is she's one of the state oracles for the office of the Dalai Lama. She is a teacher now in her own right. She's a dear friend of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and she embodies joy. So I really wanted to take part of what I saw yesterday of her presentation, which was embodying the Bodhisattva ideal. Again, something that we're talking about in this presentation. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about her, what she talked about yesterday. And her presentation yesterday was through Tagar, which is Mingyur Rinpoche's organization. Mingyur Rinpoche is not part of FPMT. He's in the Kagyu tradition. His father is Urgyen Tuku, who I actually met. I met his brother first in 1986, Chökyi Nyima Rinpoche, and their father I also got to meet, and their father gave me a lesson for life. That took 8 years for me to get the lesson. It was quite an interesting. He set me up, and then 8 years later, he explained what he'd done. It's really good. So this family of Rinpoches and I have some connection. But so Mingyur Rinpoche was hosting, his organization was hosting Kadrala's presentation on the embodying the Bodhisattva ideal yesterday. But I thought that some of the things that Mingyur Rinpoche was saying might be useful to talk about as well. And then I started finding all kinds of resources about equalizing and exchanging our attitude about self and others from Serkon Rinpoche, Senchab Serkon Rinpoche, and Alex Berzin's archives. If you have never accessed Berzin's YouTube channel or his website, it's an incredible resource. So I can share these with you if you like, but what I'd really like to try to do is to go backwards. We didn't do it in this introductory video on the Discovering Buddhism module itself. Have you all watched this in the past? Have any of you? Okay. It is about 26 minutes and we have 2 hours, but so we can decide when you'd like to watch it, maybe in the middle so you're not listening to me the entire time, and I can do that. But this is a wonderful presentation that for each of the modules there's a short video introducing the module with a Sangha member, teacher, and Richard Gere introducing it all and all of those things. So, and there's a hidden secret in it I won't tell you about, so you can find out. Oh, it's deciding to play now. I thought I was going to the next. Do you want to watch it now? Yes, Barbara wants to watch it now. Okay, so let's try it. You let me know if you can hear it or not. Would you like to mention 1 or 2 things that you felt were important or that you heard that were different, something you hadn't heard before, something you hadn't thought about?
I got smacked in the face with my own words. Yes. I had said this the other day. My needs are not being met. Yeah. That was pretty interesting. Yeah, I've got to, I need to swallow that. I need to digest that because, yeah, I used those words just the other day, and that it is pretty selfish of me to expect somebody else to meet my needs. That's, yeah, I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as I'm being assertive. I'm this amazing, strong woman. No, I was being pretty rude. So yeah.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because sometimes people need confidence and need to be learning how to be assertive and how to stand up for themselves. I have to teach some of my 14-year-old students, I am competent, I am capable, I am confident. We have to learn that too. So I don't think it's about like making ourselves go through a process that's like um, judgmental, but it's tricky. Sometimes we have to hear it that way, and like we have to hear it that way in order to kind of break through um, habits that we have or something that we're an unawareness. I mean, as Tuten Children was saying, it's about meditating on it and having that awareness of when you're angry, when that's arising in smaller and smaller increments, and really um, cultivating that self honesty and looking at what we're doing, um, so that we can catch ourselves, apply the antidotes that we have, or make the choices that we want to make in that situation, so that it's not just reacting and having things come out because we have these um, kind of ways of doing things that we've always done it, but they aren't really transforming our minds. I have so many thoughts that come in my head, like I want to say, but I want to hear any other new things or um, points that you heard. Yes, Barbara.
A really good reminder for me was, is it a problem or is it an opportunity? That reminder was really powerful for me.
Good. So I think that we can go back to something I think I mentioned in the first class about the eight worldly dharmas. And this goes back to what Shayla was saying about, having that sense of wanting something for the self, wanting something, I need this, therefore you should give it to me, is one kind of manifestation, but another is just um the eight worldly dharmas, or the eight worldly concerns, I wanting pleasure, wanting um recognition or fame, wanting gifts, and uh now I'm forgetting the another one. It'll come.
Something about
And then the
reputation.
opposite,
Is it something about,
reputation.
is that one of them?
Yeah. Yep. We've got wanting pleasure, not wanting suffering, wanting good reputation or praise, and not wanting infamy, wanting um, gifts or not wanting the lack of gifts. And then there's another set, and I seem to have forgotten about it. It will come back eventually. But those eight worldly concerns are even more depth and specific for that sense of um, wanting something for the self, right? That is somehow fundamental to the problem, it having those kinds of desires or aversions based on something that's not furthering um Dharmic practice. So the reason I'm saying this is based on Lama Zopa Rinpoche has said many times in many different teachings that when he first started to practice Dharma wasn't when he was a child learning the rituals, wasn't when he was doing prayers and so on, even though he probably was doing Dharma from our perspective, but from his perspective, he says he didn't really start to do Dharmic activity until he understood the difference between Dharma and the 8 worldly concerns. So that if we want to actually transform our mind in a way that we haven't already transformed our mind, one of the things that we can look at is what I'm doing for the purpose of getting one of these 8 worldly benefits? Do I sit here and teach this class because I want fame, because I want you guys to think that I'm a good teacher? Do I, when I think about my students and I'm constantly thinking they're not doing what I want them to do and they're the problem, is it because I want to be seen as a good teacher? Is it because I want them to learn my way? Is it because I want some worldly concern, or is it really out of concern for them? Have I kind of discerned in myself where my or my mind has come in and tricked myself into thinking I'm doing good, but I'm actually not doing Dharma at all because I'm totally concerned with reputation or the pleasantness of watching someone get something for the first time, or the gift of respect that I'm hoping that my students will give me all the time, which I'm not sure they do, but that looking at, we need all these kinds of tools to be able to kind of expand our awareness of how we're interacting with what's in front of us. And we have to, Kadrullah was saying, we have to be honest with ourselves, that's going to be the basis of this. Because we are human, we are going to get angry, we are going to get frustrated, and we are going to form attachments, and they're going to cause problems in our lives. And yet, we have to be able to apply wisdom and insight that we gain through listening to the Dharma, through studying the Dharma, through meditating and becoming familiar, like Venerable Roger was talking about, how we every day we go through the Lamrim and we understand impermanence better. We understand that things aren't the way that we perceive them. We build our capacity to understand emptiness, and we come at that from all angles. We do that from developing our bodhichitta until we are understanding emptiness through the bodhichitta side, as well as through the philosophical, intellectual, academic sides that we can investigate. But we do all of that in the moment, like again, Venerable Roger was pointing it out in terms of being natural. If we just say, oh, I'm going to sit on my cushion and cultivate an angry mind, and then I'll handle it. It's not the same as being faced with somebody coming at us with a situation that we weren't necessarily anticipating or prepared for, and seeing how our mind actually reacts to that situation. So when we are looking at these verses of thought transformation and really going into how to train our mind in these ways of, here's someone who's coming at us and presenting these challenges to us, how do we actually handle that? How do we have enough awareness of what our reaction is to that? How do we have enough vigilance to be able to apply techniques that we have studied or practiced on the cushion? And how do we sort of bring our training into a natural state so that it's not something that I have experienced over time is sometimes when sitting on a cushion, it becomes a mental, not a Ferris wheel, it's the treadmill, like the mice go around in a circle, right? And my mind is just saying, okay, so it's so analytical of itself that there's no room to breathe, kind of. But it's also, it's creating its own problems, and kind of creating an unnatural state of reacting to itself in a way. And I don't recognize one of the people now that I see on our screen. And so welcome, it's nice to see you here. Thank you. So I don't know if that is helpful or not, but that's something I was thinking about. But Kadrala was saying, you know, we will actually get angry. We will then need to be honest with ourselves and then apply that wisdom and insight that we have. And it's one of those things where you pull in any of the teachings that sort of apply to that situation. So one of the teachings of Shantideva is about, in the Bodhisattva way of life, is if you are encountering a situation and you think about it, can I change the distinguishing feature of how you're reacting is, can I actually do something to change this? Can I actually change this situation through my actions, through my thoughts, through my words? What is it that I am actually capable of doing in this situation? If the answer is no, I can't do anything to change this, then you don't need to worry about it. And if the answer is yes, you don't need to worry about it. Because if you can't change anything, you can't do anything. And if you can, you should just do it and without worrying about it, right? So this kind of thought process is happening all the time? Can I actually influence this situation and make it into happiness? Or is it something that I need to just let go of and walk away from? And so that was something that I wanted to point out from the teaching from Kadrula. She was teaching on the Bodhisattva way of life and going through like an outline of the 6 chapters. And one of the things I wanted to tie in with that was how that relates to these 8 verses, in that the 6 paramitas are the Bodhisattva ways of practice. So Kadrula even said, you can't be Buddhist. You can only call yourself a Buddhist if you are practicing the 6 paramitas. So these 6 paramitas are generosity, ethical discipline, or I think she called it confession, patience, diligence, or joyous effort, concentration, or stabilizing the mind, and wisdom. And so when we're going through these 8 verses, we're looking at the first 5 as compassion, or the tools, and then the last one in the last verse is wisdom. But we should be thinking about wisdom as we're going through it, because the wisdom factor is really influencing all of our actions, and it's underlying everything. Without that understanding of what it means to have something in reality exist or not exist, and how that is perceived, how it is distorted by our minds, by our sense of self, by our 8 worldly concerns, and how it is expanded and accurate when we are looking at Dharma, and how Dharma is intended to be the accurate interpretation of reality, not overlaying it and adding more on. Like Shayla was saying, I was being assertive. I thought I was being assertive, but now I realize that I was being selfish, right? So being really careful with Dharma as not adding another layer of suppression or another layer of misinterpretation of reality, because that's not what it's for. Means that we have to kind of mix up our sort of, we have to hear things that are new. We have to kind of expose ourselves to thinking in a different way, and really start to try to understand what is meant by this whole concept of wisdom and emptiness, and the philosophical meanings of that within the context of the Lamrim. So it's not in its own, often its own kind of philosophical realm. It's also integrated into bodhicitta, integrated into ethical discipline, integrated into what's called renunciation, is the foundation for for all of it. So do no harm to others is the basic teaching of the Buddha, right? And so if you are confused or whatever, and you look at it, just, are you doing harm or are you not doing harm? Go simple. Go back to the basics. Rim Foundation is really that particular teaching of the Buddha. Do no harm to self or others, really. So I hope I'm not being too kind of disjointed this evening. I feel like I am a little bit, and I'm sorry about that. But sometimes it just comes out that way. But I'm trying to pull in some different things. So I wanted to go through the verses 3 and 4 tonight. And that meant that I first was gonna do a little bit of a review. But before we do that, if anybody, do you want to just keep going through the 2 hours, or do you need a quick break?
Personally, I would like to keep going because again, I would like to have a few minutes before I do the Vajrasattva practice.
Okay, anybody
So that's
object? We can
my
just keep
personal
going.
preference.
Yeah, if nobody needs a break, we can just do that. I'll just drink a little bit of water. It is water.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I wanted to review what we had done in the last couple of weeks, and then go into the next 2 verses. So verse 1 was, determined to accomplish all success, I shall always practice holding dear all sentient beings who are more precious than wish-fulfilling gems. So all success, meaning becoming a Buddha, practice holding dear, making sure we're including every single sentient being and understanding the preciousness in terms of more than even something that can grant our greatest wishes, partly because all these sentient beings are the basis for our practice, especially of generosity, ethical discipline. I can't practice ethical discipline with myself. I have to practice ethical discipline in relation to someone else, generosity in relation to someone else, patience in relation to those people that challenge my patience and bring out the sparks in my, that are hidden now after years of meditation. They rarely show up except for my young students. And yet they're still there. Those things are still in there. And so it's incredibly precious that someone inspires generosity, inspires me to practice patience, that there's a need for me to practice patience, that someone is, that I have to somehow relate to others in order to accomplish these incredibly rich practices. I couldn't do it without them. They become my wish-fulfilling jewel. I would not make it to enlightenment if I didn't have these beings presenting these challenges for me, or these opportunities for me. So these were your thoughts, some of them. And how did I get all this here? Okay, verse 2, wherever I go and whomever I accompany, I shall practice seeing myself as the lowest of all and sincerely hold others dear and supreme. So I don't know, did I mention to you guys that I practiced this while I was trying to teach? I didn't share that with you. I tried practicing this particular verse while I was going into a public school, and it was a little bit difficult, when my principals didn't understand what I was doing. Because I think I took it a little overboard, you know? And that was why I kind of emphasized to you all that it is really about keeping the outside presentation of yourself the same and doing this as an attitude adjustment, right? You are looking at this not to impress someone with your humility, right? You are not doing this to get yourself trampled on, which does not do anybody much good in the short run, for sure. And public school is pretty much about the short run still. But your your goal is really to transform your own mind. So at certain moments, it may be that you practice this out in the world, but you might have some consequences for that you're not, that might hurt your paycheck, really. Anyway, just a word of warning. But it is something that you want to take to that level inside, at least, right? You want to be honest with yourself. You want to sincerely see others as more than you, because there in the Lam Rim there are explanations of you want to hold others more dear than yourself because you are one person. Each of us is just one person. Other sentient beings are infinite persons. Even if you take just the 8 billion people, human people, right? That feels infinite in my mind. I can't imagine 8 billion. Those 8 billion are more important. They're supreme to the one single I. But yet, every moment of my life, I walk around as if I am the most important. I am the most important to myself. I'm responsible for my survival. I am the one that has to take care of myself. We've got all this self-reliance thing that we've got from like Walt Whitman and, all these Thoreau and, Western thought of self-reliance and being responsible. Taking care includes taking care of the self. And yet, if we kind of put aside our habits of self-thought, self-value, and so on, and we just did the numbers, 8 billion here and 1 here, it's pretty obvious which one's supreme. Not me. So practicing that really kind of extreme humility leads us to some trouble. Like every time you go to eat a bite of food, who's given up their life so that you can eat that bite of food? Every single one. Probably every single swallow of water, right? There's some other that has sacrificed so that I eat. Insects, if you're a meat eater, the obvious donor of the meat, but even vegetables and everything, and then all of the people that have invested their efforts and things. So it can be a bit of a a complexity that can be overwhelming. And so you have to kind of be vigilant and aware of your own mind. When is it getting to be too much? When is it getting to be too complex? When is it when is it producing anxiety and giving me a panic attack? That's not what it's for. So we have to kind of be skillful with how we treat ourselves and really get in the habit of thinking long term. So it's not just, am I accomplishing it this instant, but am I making progress through the cycles of understanding that are longer than just this moment, just this brief moment of insight? Am I developing good habits? Is my mind going in the right direction? All these kinds of things. So wherever I go and whomever I accompany, I shall practice. And that is that means that we never waste a second of our life. So that's another of these lamrim and modules in Discovering Buddhism, the death module, the death topic of contemplating death and how it is certain, but it is totally uncertain when death will happen, and that only Dharma helps at the time of death. So at the end of all of that contemplation, you come to the realization that there's not a moment to lose, right? Like the Kadampa Geshe who, or master who wouldn't cut down the bush in his doorway because there wasn't time to worry about the 8 worldly concerns. Likewise, there's no time to waste in. And so having a practice like this, anything that arises becomes the natural way to practice all of the teachings that the Buddha, the Kadampas, the old Kadampas, not the new Kadampas, the old Kadampas, and the Lamrim, all of the lineage masters have brought us to. So again, let's look at the variety. So we're going to be looking at verses 3 and 4, and they're going to have a different translation. But here, I'm going to start with the translation by Alexandra Berzin, just to give our mind a little bit of pliability in the terms, so that we can see that we can grapple with them and gnaw on them a bit. So the third verse is, whatever I am doing, may I check the flow of my mind, and the moment that conceptions or disturbing emotions arise, since they debilitate myself and others, may I confront and avert them with forceful means. So this is what Venerable Roger was saying about antidotes, right? Applying antidotes the very moment that something arises that endangers my mind slipping into non-virtue, that it endangers my actions to slip into non-virtue. So this means that we need to actually know what's right and what's wrong every single moment of what we're doing. So then let's read the 4th verse as well here. Whenever I see beings instinctively cruel, overpowered by negativities and serious problems, may I cherish them as difficult to find as discovering a treasure of gems. Okay. So I wanted you to think for a moment. This is only our 3rd week. We're about halfway done with the course. That's amazing already. What did you used to think about problems, happiness, bodhisattva activities, practice, Buddhism? And now, what do you know? And we're going to come back to this and do a little bit more at the end, I hope, of tonight. But just to start your brain thinking. And if you want, you can take a piece of paper and a pen and make 3 lines. And what I used to think, what I now know, what do I know now? What am I wondering about? So that if something comes up, you'll have reference to that. Okay. So let's go into these new verses. In all actions, I shall examine my mind. The moment an unsubdued thought arises, endangering myself and others, I shall face and avert it. So this is back to Kadrala's example of how we need to be honest. We need to be aware. Tibetan Children was saying about how we need to be mindful. And Venerable Roger was saying about how we need to apply antidotes in the moment, in that natural moment. In all actions, I shall examine my mind, and the moment an unsubdued thought arises, endangering myself and others, I shall face and avert it. So this is the honesty, facing it, not pushing it away, not subduing it, which just makes it grow and come back in weird ways. Not suppressing. Not subduing it, yes, but suppressing it, no. Okay, so we need to know the difference between suppressing something and covering it up and dealing with it honestly in a way that eliminates it. And as we get better and better at eliminating these things, like there used to be this blackberry patch. I lived in Oregon, and behind my shed there was this incredible patch of blackberries, and I would go in every spring and I would chop it all down to the root, to the ground, and I try to get some of the roots out, and every summer it would just like explode and like fill the whole space behind my shed again, because I didn't get the roots. And blackberries, they had thorns like an inch long. They were horrible. They were like awful. And as I would get better and better at it, or when I had energy to do it, I would go and I would dig out more and more and more, hoping that would get rid of the blackberry patch. It didn't produce blackberries. I don't know. It's just the brambles somehow. So it's like that kind of thing, examining the mind and really being honest and actually trying to find the root causes of things to avert them, to get them to not manifest in a way that harms myself or others. Now, how do I harm myself in that? When I have anger arising, that anger is eating away at all of the good things in my life. Physically, anger is known to cause all kinds of ailments. Mentally, when we are angry, I don't know if you've ever been around an angry person day in and day out, but the way that eats at somebody else is obvious when you're around them, but it obviously also eats at them, right? if you walk around angry in the world, you see the world through that anger. That's all that there is. It's distorted by that, right? That harms your mental state when you have that kind of an emotional disturbance. So averting that so that it doesn't endanger yourself or others brings about a state of happiness in itself, right? When you don't have those disturbing emotions, you have the contentment that Venerable Choden was talking about, Tibetan children. And then that happiness builds and builds as well. So what we're really talking about is examining the mind. Have you all been exposed to the thoughts about the three poisons? Is that something you've heard about before? Barbara's saying yes. Barbara, what is your name, sir? I don't know your name.
My name is Dylan.
Hi, Dylan. Have you heard of the three poisons?
Yeah, but I'm probably getting them mixed up with something else. Is it arrogance? Is that one of them?
Nope.
Okay.
Although pride is one of their children. So arrogance would work. Anything that's a disturbing emotion is going to be one of the children of these three, and one of them is the parent of the three. So the poisons in the wheel of life, there's a pig, a crow, and a snake, and those are representing the three poisons. In the Lam Rim, they're talked about. Basically, these are the root afflictions, right? We're looking at the root, like the blackberry brambles. We're really wanting to get as close to the root as possible so that all the others don't sprout. So anger is one of them. Anger is sort of only exists if you also have attachment. And attachment only exists if you have what's called the technical term of ignorance. That doesn't mean you don't know your multiplication tables. It means that you misidentify the reality of the self and the nature of all phenomena. Okay, so that's very technical, but it is really important to understand that that is a specific term and is a misknowing rather than a not knowing. It's often confusion is another way of talking about ignorance sometimes, but it's really being confused about who you are at the most ultimate level of reality. So these three, ignorance, which begets attachment, which then produces anger when you don't get what you want. Okay. So those three are what you're examining in your mind. So one thing is to really be clear, the mind is not anger, the mind is not attachment, and the mind is not what's called ignorance. They are known to be the type they attach themselves to the mind. They are adventitious. They take advantage of the mind. They take advantage of something that's happening, some distraction, something they take root, and then they are covering the true nature of the mind. This is really important because it means that you don't have to have them in your mind. We do have them pretty constantly in our minds now, but through training and through intention, motivation, and so on, all of this becomes something that you can wash away, right? You can wash away anger and you're left without anger. Your mind still functions. You can wash away attachment, and without the, and this is attachment, craving, grasping attachment, kinds of, not just closeness. I think you could say it's not dependent on, closeness is not dependent on attachment, and those kinds of fine distinctions are more and more important as you go into these deeper, but that attachment can be washed away and you can still have a healthy mind, because we're talking about the type of attachment that leads to suffering, not the type of normal attachment that a baby goes through in developmental stages with their parents, right, or their caregivers. We're talking about attachment as a craving that wants more and sort of superimposes that on reality. It's no longer what's really in front of us. It's a superimposition of I want it. Okay. So it's kind of gone a step further than I like it. That's a distinction. And then you can wash that away and you can examine the mind until you get to the I am this. So anything that we go, like I am a kind person. I am a generous person. I am a healthy person. Any of these characteristics that we talk about are temporary. They are not our true self. And so when we equate our true self with being generous or kind or something like that, and then we have a moment of not feeling generous, we get into this kind of space of conflict with ourselves, right? And the thing is that we are neither kind nor unkind. We aren't the self that we normally think of as the self. What we are is very subtle and very sort of takes a lot of investigation, philosophical investigation, and so on. It takes practice to get subtler and subtler and subtler in examining our mind. But we can wash away our mind, wash that misidentification of self away from our mind, and our mind will still be a healthy mind. In fact, it will be a more healthy mind without those three poisons. Does that make sense? Okay. So we examine our mind in this training based on understanding those kinds of disturbing emotions and the roots of those, in order to be honest and face what we are doing ourselves, what's arising in ourselves, and averting it to whatever level we are capable. So at the beginning, we're able to say, I'm not going to kill that ant, right? It's not harming me. I'm not going to go and squish it. Right? And we can look at the sort of the surface level of averting our sort of dangerous impulse. And then later we can see, oh, that right there, that moment, that was a moment of frustration. And if I let that moment of frustration build without averting it, it will become anger, and I will shout bad words at my mother. Right? And so what we're doing is we're becoming more and more skillful as we go. So we start with the obvious and avert that, and then we go into more and more depth and avert that until we are eliminating minute amounts of anger rather than full-blown rage. Right? So then our thoughts become subdued because they are calm. They're not following any of those impulses to anger, following any of those impulses to grasping attachment, or engaging in eventually those misidentifications of the self, like building up. Like some people really do build up their sense of self and become really egotistical. We've seen it. We see it in our political, our social arenas, the social media. I mean, all of that. Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts, anything I might have missed that you know? Yes, please, Dylan.
I know I'm the late kid to class, so forgive me. I'm sure that you've said this at some point, but it just struck me when you said that the true that ignorance, attachment, and anger is not the true nature of the mind. So are there three things that you could tell me that are the true nature of the mind? Or is that a different class?
It's a different class, but the true nature of mind, the mind is, the definition of mind is clear and knowing, or luminous. Clear, luminous, knowing, those three things.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, they are all technical terms.
I'm sure.
But if you study Mind and Its Potential in January, I believe, is the Discovering Buddhism module that will go into a little bit more about what the mind is.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
And if you hear of Lorik, this is lojong, which is mind training. Lorik are the types of mind, and you can RIG, LO, and then a separate word, RIG. That's the Tibetan word for mind types, or how they actually start to define different aspects of the mind.
Okay, well, I have a direction to go in. Thank you.
Oh, once you start down this rabbit hole, there are directions to go for the rest of your life.
Cool. Awesome.
And you'll never get bored because it's all interconnected, and you go back to it, you come back to it, come back to it. All right. Anybody want to share about what you used to think, about what you now know, or what you wonder? Is there anything you'd like to share? Or shall we go into the fourth verse? Well, you guys are not shy to share, so I think we'll go on. Did I skip the fourth verse somehow? Oh, yeah. Yes, I did. Sorry. I thought I was ahead of myself. Okay, so for verse 4, whenever I see a being of wicked nature who is overwhelmed by heavy non-virtue and suffering, I shall hold him dear, as if I had discovered a precious treasure, difficult to find. Think to yourself, have you ever met anybody like this? Wicked nature. Overwhelmed by heavy non-virtue and suffering. I mean, we're talking extreme here. We're not talking just, yeah, everybody has some wicked nature. Everybody is overwhelmed by non-virtue. Everybody has suffering. This is true on a certain level. But then there are some people that are just like really obviously not doing good in the world. And that those actions, those bad actions, those wrong actions, killing, lying, stealing, adultery, intoxicants, harsh speech, creating schisms in communities just for the joy of watching people fall apart. These kinds of actions create a heaviness that's going to follow that person for eons of time, because every little thing we do doesn't just disappear. This goes into all about karma. So now, Dylan, you're going to get the next whole big bag of worms, right? And basically what you're looking at is somebody who's creating hell for themselves, literally, in the future, by doing these actions with lots of anger and huge amounts of like passionate engagement in the world, but also really harming others. All those beings that are harmed are owed that in some future life. They're going to extract their pound of flesh, right? It's going to happen. It is going to come back. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not necessarily going to happen before they die in this life. But the whole idea of karma is we are actually creating what we will experience in the future. Right now, we're experiencing the results of what we created in the past. So if you want to know your past life, just look at what you have to experience now. What's arising with you? Do you have beauty and joy and lots of love in your life? You've created the causes for those. You've done good things to have that happen to you. Every good thing, every colorful thing around you, every piece of beauty, good smell, good piece of food, you created the cause for. And every piece of suffering that you experience, you created the cause for. So everything you do now is influencing what you'll experience later. So someone who's going around killing, lying, stealing, and all the rest, they're going to experience incredible poverty. They're going to be killed in horrible ways. They're going to have so much suffering come to them because of their actions now. How can we hold them dear? They're doing this out of those three poisons, just like we are. Anger, attachment, ignorance. They're no different than we are, actually. Holding them dear is really just understanding that they don't understand, but without the judgment, without this, I'm superior, because remember, we're the lowest of them all, right? And it's not about you, it's never pointing the figure. This is all about looking at my own mind, right? But I need to understand that my habitual way of thinking, they're wicked, needs to transform into they are dear. And how horrendous it is for them that they don't understand what they're doing to themselves. Not only that, but it's like they are a treasure, a precious treasure chest that you have just uncovered. That most wicked of beings, that person that's obviously doing harm. How do they become a precious treasure to you? What's so precious about their being a harmful person to you? How does that work? Because we're not saying this just to, say this. There are people like that. How do they become a precious treasure? Is it the same type of preciousness as the wish fulfilling, like the wish fulfilling jewel earlier in verse 1 or 2? Or is it different? What do you think, Barbara?
I think it's the same.
So express to me, what do you think that is?
They are precious gems or jewels in terms of showing me, helping me to understand, helping me to, like you said, practice the 6 perfections, helping me to understand love, helping me to understand that is there's nothing more precious than that, is how I look at it.
Rachel.
So yes, Shayna.
Susan says they give you the opportunity to practice.
So again, if we are wanting to accomplish all success, we can't do that until we find the most wicked of all sentient beings, right? Because we can't leave any single sentient being out. And it's not just practice always. This one, at a certain point, our minds have kind of gotten subdued, right? We've subdued our minds. We're not experiencing anger all the time. We're not experiencing. At a certain point, you need the really wicked ones to come up and be right in your face, because nothing else is disturbing your mind. Nothing else is disturbing your mind at all. And so the precious treasure is that you have to face the seeds, the seeds, the karmic seeds that haven't ripened yet in your own mind. And that means that when somebody who's really wicked arrives in front of you, those seeds are ripening, right? And to purify your own karmic misdeeds in the past, you need to have some pretty extreme situations come at you. And those become more and more precious as you go along in the training. Does that make sense? Shayla looks a little shell-shocked.
I am the one being that is in the forefront of my mind. I worked in a correctional facility, and there was a gentleman who I actually walked past once, and just looking into his eyes, I felt like prey. Turns out he was a fixer and was testifying against his boss. And yeah, it was thick. It was very, very thick. And I don't even know where to even begin with that.
So yeah, most of us don't have much experience with really wicked people unless we do have experience with very wicked people, I guess. I don't know how to say that. I mean, there are a lot of us, I guess I'll say it this way. Until I became a teacher, I had no clue how people were living in so much trauma. My life wasn't so full of it. I had a little trauma here and there, but when I became a teacher and I had, 30 kids in front of me, 2 of them homeless, most of them with their parents working 4 or 5 jobs between the two. I mean, it just unbelievable traumas, one after another. Just that kind of exposure. It's like some of us have led sheltered lives, is I guess the way to say it. And part of that is the preciousness of our human existence, of this precious human existence, where we have enough leisure to actually study the Dharma, to actually transform our mind. Part of that is precious, and part of it is insulating us from the reality of the way the suffering world exists. So here we are talking about real people who are committing acts that are unthinkable in our protected environment, our sheltered or insulated life. And yet, the attitude, not necessarily the actions, like I'm not sure it would always be a good idea to sit down and become friends with a wicked being. Depending on the circumstance and context, it might not be a good idea. But in our inner attitude, understanding that they are still precious and that their appearance in our life would have a purpose. I guess we could even think of this in terms of non-person wickedness or like climate change, right? The extremes of heavy non-virtue that we're experiencing in the environment, the suffering that we're experiencing through the environment, which we have created collectively through our wickedness, our unbalanced wickedness. this is a precious treasure that's difficult to find. Dylan, have you caught up with us?
Probably not. However, I think Geshe-la yesterday or the day before was talking about something along these lines where we're supposed to be glad about some difficulty coming our way, precious treasure. And I think what I realized from that, it's like, so if something negative is happening to one of us, and if we act in a negative way, then that's not good, because that's going to actually create more negative karma, right? But if we take the blow and feel the heat and just let it ride, then we burn off the karma, something like that. And so, am I catching on? Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
It's one level of it for sure. It's when we have a problem, can we change the problem or not? If we can't change it, then we can change our attitude towards that problem. And through doing that, we can actually be happier about the problem than we would have been normally, right? And there's value in just doing that, in saying to ourselves, oh, this is purification. And I should be happy I'm purifying this karma, because now in the future, I won't have to experience it again, because I'm not creating more of the same. I'm just purifying it.
I'm pretty excited to be
So
on.
that is part.
I'm sorry.
Again?
I was saying that I'm pretty glad to be on the team, because
I missed what you said.
yeah, I'm glad to be on the team, because it seems like the anger part is, you just mentioned it here. It's one of the root afflictions, and I get angry with my cat. So I got to chill out. That's what I just got from all that.
You as you become more and more aware of the moments of anger and how they build, you catch it earlier and earlier, right? And then it's not that it's not arising, you just catch it earlier and earlier and earlier, and that will chill you out. Yeah. But there's another aspect to these 8 verses besides purification, and that is the practice of the Bodhisattva. And this is all within that context of training the mind in order to transform the mind itself into the mind of a Buddha. So one of the ways that the Buddha has practiced is to purify everything that's negative in the mind, or adventitiously negative in the mind. And so Sangye is the word for Buddha, and Sang is purification, and Gye is this expansive vastness. And so I believe it's also all accomplishing. So in order to get to both of those things, you need an incredible amount of what's called merit. Merit in terms of actions that you create, and in terms of wisdom, understanding the true nature of reality. So this is not just purification, but it's also developing the capacity to become a Buddha for the specific purpose of benefiting all sentient beings. This is what a bodhisattva, this is the bodhisattva attitude, wishing to become enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right. Barbara wanted a break. We're almost to the end of our time, and it seems like we could just keep talking and talking, and for homework, just do I used to think about, now I know, and I wonder on your own, just so you can kind of keep your thoughts like moving and so on. And we didn't do a Tonglen, we did the movie instead today, so I'll save that for next time. And yeah, so we'll go into the dedication, so I'll stop sharing this. And I apologize, I'm not sure I was very clear about motivation, but hopefully Venerable Connie led us through that in the video, so we did that. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme bodhichitta, the jewel bodhichitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And so now is a series of prayers for our teachers. And you can consider any teacher you wish as we're saying these. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us and in intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. O Lama, please, please live long. Beloved teacher, leading your students toward wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the graduated path, you are the unequaled guide. Please live a long and stable life. So have a wonderful week. Be mindful. Avert, face and avert. Be mindful, face and avert. Yeah. Good luck, Dylan.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Appreciate you too.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Have a good night, everyone. You're welcome.
Thank you,
Sheena.
Rachel.